As mandatory OTAs have came and went this June, Duke Johnson has made the news cycle by reaffirming to the media his request to be traded. Now, as I have stated before, I believe that both for the Browns and Duke Johnson, it would be mutually beneficial if they parted ways by a trade or a release somehow, as the Browns don't really have a need for Duke, and Duke doesn't really have a role on this team, and for his future, he needs to go somewhere else. But as this situation keeps going on and on, it does seem that the Browns are having either trouble finding a good market for Duke Johnson and getting something of value back for Duke Johnson. This leaves the Browns in a very awkward position to where publicly, in order to raise his trade value, the Browns have to act as if they have a lot planned for Duke, as if Duke is a valuable part to this team this year, while privately trying to deal him and get rid of him as soon as possible. But the issue with that, and the issue with both sides kind of making this public, is that, as we saw with somebody like Antonio Brown, players are now better equipped to force the issue with teams. Now, don't get me wrong here. I don't think Duke Johnson is going to show up on LeBron James' show The Shop on HBO with a blonde mustache talking bad about Baker. Matter of fact, Duke has proven that he is a professional by showing up and participating in the entire OTAs. And also, Duke doesn't have the name recognition and the power to be able to pull a move like Antonio Brown did in that same exact way. But by being public with his trade request, he does make an awkward situation for the Browns, which for a player of Duke's caliber makes trading him a higher priority to the front office. While people focus a lot on Odell Beckham and how he's doing in OTAs or how the new corners are doing, I think the most important thing that was happening at these OTAs was behind closed doors between the Browns front office and Duke Johnson. Because how those conversations go, I think, will ultimately be the difference between the Browns being able to trade Duke Johnson or having to release him and lose cap space. See, Duke Johnson has made it clear that he does not want to be on this team this year for his reasons, but he's also explained how he's going to go about it.
The trade request this spring, do you still want to be here?
I only want to be someone I want to. And I think at the end of the day, that's all this is about, is being someone you're wanted. In the moment you're not wanted anymore, well, in my case, the moment I'm not wanted anymore, I think it's best that, we find a middle ground and we do what's best for the team. If you don't want me here, there's, no need to keep me or force me to be here if you don't want me here. I've always wanted to be here, and I made it very clear, especially after going 1-15, then 0-16, and re-signing here. I made it very clear what my intention was. So,
do you feel wanted now here?
Nothing has changed. This is the only difference between last week and this week is this is mandatory.
You can tell Duke feels betrayed by the front office, and he makes a few good points. Duke has been a dependable piece for the Browns in some of their worst years. I mean, literally their worst years. Let's face it, Duke Johnson went through 1-15 and 0-16 with this franchise and still decided to have faith in it and re-sign. And in his mind, he doesn't feel like that same faith has been paid back to him. Now, there are a ton of arguments about whether it's fair for Duke to have that level of expectation in a team when this is a business at the end of the day. But also, we don't know what was said behind closed doors in those contract negotiations, and if when they re-signed him, they made promise to him that turned out to be disingenuous. We just don't know what side of the story there is to that. So if I'm looking at this from Duke Johnson's eyes, if right after you sign your contract, knowing you're going to have Carlos Hyde and Nick Chubb, and then Carlos Hyde gets traded, which leaves room for both you and Nick Chubb, and you guys do well during the season, and then right when the offseason starts, they sign Kareem Hunt to essentially replace you, I can see how he could feel like he was betrayed from his point of view. And I feel like the biggest problem with Duke Johnson is that he has no faith or trust in this organization to do the right thing for his career going forward. And yes, while that may be selfish for Duke Johnson to worry about technically, I think it's a justifiable selfish play here for Duke Johnson. Duke Johnson is a running back and he's 25 years old. At the end of his extension, he's going to be 28 years old and he only has guaranteed money left for this season, which means he's essentially on a 1-year deal with the Browns, with this being kind of a prove-it year. If you are on a 1-year deal with the Browns and you are on a prove-it deal with the Browns to be able to show your value to other teams or the Browns, would you appreciate the strong possibility that this team uses you for 8 weeks and then ships you off to like Arizona for a 5th-round pick in the middle of the season, and then you struggle to pick up at Arizona, and then you hit the free agency market with nobody wanting to sign you to a long-term deal? This kind of thing can ruin Duke Johnson's future value as it comes to free agency. And I think Duke sees the writing on the wall fairly enough that he's just there to be insurance for Kareem Hunt. And that once that insurance was not needed, he would be shipped somewhere and have to pretty much be on a 1-year deal with the team with 8 games left to prove himself in a situation that just would not favor him and favor his ability to be able to maintain his career. And that is what I think Duke meant when he said he wanted to meet the Browns at a middle ground by requesting for the trade right now. He understands that the Browns are going to trade him. He understands that the Browns want to get value out of him because he is a good, valuable player. But he also is not okay with and does not want to be Kareem Hunt insurance and wants to have the last year of his deal essentially be on a team that he has an opportunity to prove himself on. And while I understand that, being unselfish and being a great teammate is one thing, but that's not a luxury that's afforded to somebody in Duke Johnson's position. He is a running back, and he's going to get on the wrong side of 25 here soon. He needs to be able to prove his value in order for him to just stay in the league. And to him, this issue is bigger than winning. This is about maintaining his career. So I can't fault Duke Johnson for making this play. I think Duke sees requesting a trade right now as a middle ground between trading him 8 weeks into the season and then him just simply being cut, which I promise you is what Duke Johnson actually wants. And that this trade request is just a way or an attempt for Duke Johnson to have some kind of control over his future. I can't expect or be mad at Duke Johnson for not wanting to be a silent passenger on a train whose destination seems to be him not being in the league at the end of the season or him barely being in the league. It's just hard to stay in the league as a running back, and these are the things you have to do if you want to stay in the league, and being a third-string running back is not something that is going to be helpful for him. But that being said, why hasn't this trade gone down? It seems like it'd be mutually beneficial. Now see, this is where it flips. The Browns, just like Duke, have their own justifiable, selfish reasons for wanting to keep Duke Johnson. The number one thing is that he is absolutely 100% Kareem Hunt insurance. See, we all know Kareem Hunt is going to be suspended for 8 games. And while it seems like he's on the right path and he's doing the right things, he recently got baptized, it looks like this man is on the way of being a better person and being able to have a longer career without having to worry about character issues being a problem. But there's always the chance when you take a risk on a player like this that he could have another incident pop up before his suspension is up, and then boom, no Kareem Hunt for the whole year. Now, if that happens, Duke Johnson does become slightly more valuable, and he becomes an important piece to have for the Browns. But there are other reasons why the Browns need Kareem Hunt insurance, not just him having to get through his 8-week suspension without having trouble, but also there is no guarantee that Kareem Hunt is going to come back and be Kareem Hunt. Now, while he's going to be able to play in the preseason, we all know that the preseason games aren't really sufficient prep for a starting NFL player when it comes to playing actual NFL games. So when Kareem Hunt comes back in week 9, there's no guarantee that he's going to be Kareem Hunt. So while it's reasonable to expect that it would take about 2-3 weeks for Kareem Hunt to be back into Pro Bowl form, we don't know how much it's going to affect him not playing in an NFL game in a year. And it could take 10 games. It could take 16 games. He could never get back to his form. And that's why keeping Duke Johnson for the Browns organization is something they see as necessary in order to have insurance for Kareem Hunt. Not just because Duke Johnson is good, but because they have similar skill sets. They'll play similar roles. And Duke Johnson is a proven vet. And it would be better than relying on an undrafted rookie or a free agent cut at the end of training camp. Now, while I believe you can replace Duke Johnson's production in this offense with that, I can't blame the Browns for not wanting to rely on that. And also the last reason why they just haven't outright cut Duke Johnson is because it's not really beneficial, and it wasn't beneficial for the Browns to either cut or trade him before June 1st. Because he has all these workout bonuses. Essentially, the way it breaks down, the way I've read it, is that if they would have traded him before June 1st, they would have lost about $1.5 million in cap space. And if they cut him, they're going to lose, I think, $3 million in cap space. That means that the Browns really don't have a reason to get rid of Duke Johnson until next year. That is also why Duke Johnson's deal is more like a one-year deal. Because while cutting him would not be beneficial this year, next year, if they cut him, they would save $4 million in salary cap space. And also, by the way, that same concept is also a reason why somebody like Christian Kirksey is more or less on his last year with the Browns, because his deal after next year becomes beneficial for the Browns to cut him, because then they would save $8 million in cap space. And if you take the 4 and the 8 that they would have by getting rid of Duke Johnson and Christian Kirksey later on in the year, that's about $12 million, which is the money that they could use to either re-sign Demarius Randall or Kareem Hunt if he has a good year. And it would be important because they would be able to just reallocate that money instead of having to cut in to their cap space, because this is a team that has a lot of young players on rookie deals that play in very high paid positions. I mean, you got Denzel Ward, you got Myles Garrett, and you got Baker Mayfield, who are going to come up off of their rookie deals within the next 2-3 years. So it's important that they keep that cap space available for retaining those very important pieces. But that all being said, the Duke Johnson trade request story is much more than it's been kind of reported. It's not really about emotions. I don't think the Browns are keeping him because of emotions. I don't think Duke Johnson strictly wants to go because of emotions. This is actually a chess game between Duke Johnson and the Browns front office. The Browns want to be able to keep Duke Johnson in order to save money in the cap next year by releasing him, and they also think it's beneficial to have Kareem Hunt insurance, while Duke Johnson, on the other hand, does not want to be Kareem Hunt insurance because he sees that as essentially leaving his career and his future earnings in the hands of a teammate that, if he wanted it to go his way, he would actually have to wish bad for, which nobody wants to be in that situation. I think one of the more interesting pieces is that while Duke Johnson has been vocal about his trade request, I don't think he's going to hold out, because he understands if he holds out, that would diminish the value that they would be able to get for him and just diminish the chance that they would trade him. So if this thing goes longer into training camp, it becomes all types of awkward for all of the people involved. But at the end of the day, this is a situation we all knew was going to happen when Kareem Hunt signed that contract early in the year. So how this plays out will be interesting, but I'm pretty sure that the Browns will find a way to move Duke Johnson for a 6th or 7th round pick at the very least before training camp starts, because this thing spilling into the season and training camp only has the potential to become more and more of a mess for both sides involved. But that is it for this week. I hope you like me explaining the Duke Johnson situation. And if you really liked it, don't forget to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and ding the notification bell so you can know when I upload. I upload 3 times a week on the dot, and hopefully you enjoy that. And if you have a buck or two to spare and you want your name at the bottom of this video in the sweet little Patreon ticker bar, please consider joining my Patreon and giving a buck or so a month. Anything helps. But again, guys, that's going to be it for this week. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.